Well, that one's hot. Now,
I got it.
whatever you just did, fixed it.
Yeah, I think I'll get.
Mr. St. Clair?
As vice chairman of the planning commission, I'll be conducting the first part of the meeting. Our first agenda item is going to be election of officers, and after that, new chairman will take over. I want to remind everybody that, and welcome everybody for coming out in all the rain for one thing, but if you want to speak on one of the items, please pick up a blue sign-in sheet card, give it to Mark, so we can call on you later if you want to express which agenda item you want to speak on. There's also a protocol on the back of the agenda that it's available at the back of the room, so we ask you to look at that and adhere to the protocol we set. As I said, our first item tonight will be election of officers for the new year. And with that, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for chairman of the Planning Commission.
I have a nomination.
John?
I'd like to recommend our fellow commissioner, Scott Russ, to be the chairman of the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? They're being done. All in favor of Scott Russ as chairman, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one abstention. Second officer is the vice chairman. Any nominations for vice chairman?
I'd like to see Ed continue.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? There being none, all in favor of Ed St. Clair as the vice chairman, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess I'll serve another term. And with Scott moving up to chairman, we now have a vacancy of secretary. So there's a secretary. Anybody have a nomination for our new secretary?
I'm going to nominate Shannon.
In her
She's
absence.
not here.
In her absence.
I'll that.
Do we
That'll
know
teach
her?
I think she'll be. I
Yeah,
think
she's
she'll-
fine.
Yeah.
All in favor of Shannon, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. With that, we have new officers, and I will turn the meeting over to our new chairman. Scott?
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair St. Clair. I really appreciate the opportunity, and the other commissioners, your confidence in having me sit as your new chairman for the Planning Commission. Before we go ahead and get started with the agenda items, I just want to take care of some housekeeping items and some of the formalities that we'll be updating as we go forward with the Planning Commission. Good evening to those of you in attendance and those of you online. I want to thank you all for attending tonight's Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting. Again, my name is Scott Russ, and I'm the chairman that will be conducting tonight's Planning Commission meeting. We appreciate that each of you has taken time from your busy schedules to attend or view tonight's meeting to observe how our town government works. All Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law, that's TCA 8-44-103. All Planning Commission meetings are recorded and may be viewed live on Charter Cable 193 and TDS Cable Channel 3, as well as on the Farragut YouTube channel. And links to the recordings may be found on the Town of Farragut website. As Vice Chairman St. Clair alluded to, those in attendance should be able to pick up a copy of the agenda at the door. And if you're unable to attend in person or viewing from home, you'll be able to see the agenda posted on the Town of Farragut website. Those Farragut citizens in attendance would like to speak concerning a specific agenda item, please pick up a blue card, as Ed alluded to. Write your name and address on the agenda number item that you wish to comment on, and drop that off with the town staff, and that'll be Mr. Shipley in this case. There will be time reserved at the end of the business meeting for comments, public comments on non-agenda subjects, which also requires that you fill out a blue card. On each agenda item, the chairman will ask the town staff if there are any citizen comments or input. During this time, any person wishing to speak to the Planning Commission on that specific agenda item may do so for up to 5 minutes, and the town staff will keep that 5-minute clock. After being recognized by the chairman, please proceed to the podium microphone in order to be heard and viewed by all. In order to conduct efficient business-like meetings, the town has adopted rules for how its meetings will be conducted. Primarily, these rules are designed to keep the meeting progressing along and assure that all points of view are heard and considered, and to provide common courtesy to everyone in attendance. At the beginning of your presentation, please state your name and address for the record. We ask that you address your questions to the chair. If necessary, the chairman may call on a commissioner or staff member to address your questions or comments. Once you've given your input, please return to your seat at that time. We also ask that persons speaking avoid the use of improper language, profanity, or other inappropriate conduct. Please only address the agenda issues. Speakers should strive to present original viewpoints and avoid redundancy. We ask that you also stay on the topic of that specific agenda item. Everyone, please remember that we are here tonight doing the people's business, and it's a very important responsibility for all of us. So, thank you for that. And the first order of business will be approval of the agenda for the July 20th, 2023 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission for the remaining items on the agenda.
Yeah, we have 4 items that are requested for postponement. Agenda items numbers 4, 7, 8, and 9. We also have a request from the applicant for agenda item number 6 to move that to the end of the regular agenda. And the staff recommends approval of these amendments to the ordinance, to the agenda.
Move for approval of the agenda as amended.
A second.
Mark, before we go ahead, do we know if the applicant for the Vogue, or Fiber-Rise rather, are they present at the moment?
The LCUB, yes, they are. Mhm.
I'm sorry, not LCB, but what was the item moved to the end? Oh, I'm sorry.
We do have a
Vogue Towers
representative from
Partners.
Vogue. He's waiting on one other person, but there
So
there
they are
is
still
someone
waiting on
here.
the other
Yes.
person? Okay.
Yeah, so we do have a representative here.
Just for clarity, can we just briefly state, number 4 is the Comfort into La Quinta, number 7 and 8 is the site plan and plats for the grocery store down at Watt
North
Road.
Watt
And number
Road.
9 is a rezoning request from Mr. Horn, and they've asked for a postponement. on that.
Postponement, yeah.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes?
Seconded
No?
that. I'm sorry, I missed the second. Ed St. Clair got the motion.
Mayor,
We-
Jay.
I think Ron had
I
the
did.
second on it.
Ron.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then, next item, approval of the minutes of the June 15th, 2023 Municipal Planning Commission meeting. You've all had a chance to review the minutes, and I think everybody here was in attendance for that meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the...
Motion to approve the June 15th Planning Commission meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
So moved.
Vote.
Okay, yes, sir. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? So moved. Okay, before we get into the first business item, which will be the item number 5, which is LCUB, the order is going to be a little bit different. The formality, we're going to change that going forward on the Planning Commission meeting, in that I'll read the applicant agenda item, and then I'll ask the town staff if they would provide their presentation and their findings on the agenda item. And once the staff has completed their report, then I'll ask the commission for a motion and a second prior to moving on to the next business steps. And the next business steps following that will be to see if Mark has any blue cards for public comment. And if there are none, then we'll open up the floor to the commissioners, starting with the commissioner that provided the motion, followed by the second, and then open it up to the remaining commissioner members.
When does the applicant get to present?
That would be following the public comment, if anybody has a blue card.
Applicant presents after public comment?
Correct.
Okay.
I think that's the order that, I think we'd like to, we'll
Okay.
try it out. It can be fluid, and we'll see how this
Yeah,
goes.
and I apologize. And then the
No worries.
commissioners are get a chance to speak after the applicant presents. I'm just getting the process down.
Yes.
New process, everybody. So we're trying something,
I'm
we're trying to make our
writing it
meetings run a little more
I'm
efficiently.
writing it down so I know when I can talk and when I can't.
Right, and to that point, Vice Mayor Pavlin, once the applicant has presented any comments that they have or input that they have, I'll call on the commissioner that made the motion,
Okay.
followed by the
Yeah.
commissioner that has made the second, and then open it up to the remaining commissioners. Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item number 5. Discussion and public hearing on the Lenore City Utility Board Fiber Grid Modernization Project to install fiber optic cable throughout the town. Fiberize applicant.
Yeah, before I view this, we have our new youth representative here, Leo Davis. I don't know if y'all have met him yet, but
Have not?
Welcome, Leo.
so
Welcome aboard, Leo.
he's going to be sitting with us for the next 12 months and hopefully learning a lot and participating, and we look forward to having him engage our commission and community. So with that, I'll give you a brief overview of this item dealing with LCUB. The plan is, this is really just an overview of LCUB's plan to install fiber optic cable throughout the town. There's a number of reasons why they're doing this, in addition to just the telecommunications component. This is also intended to help with their reliability of electrical service, to balance kind of supply and demand, be more efficient with electrical service, to provide for next generation type automated metering, electric cars and things like that we all know are rapidly coming on the horizon. And so they're trying to get ahead of the game. So there's a number of things they're trying to accomplish with this undertaking. It's a big undertaking, obviously, to install fiber throughout the town. They'll be using overhead distribution lines where they're available. And then where they're not, they'll be going underground with directional boring. And that's going to be most of our newer subdivisions. They basically are dividing the town into what's called design areas, and they're going to start with the fiber installation, working their way outward from their different substations. So that's kind of their plan. Their goal is to try to install the fiber roughly in a year from the time that they start. It's pretty ambitious, but we certainly hope they can do that. And then there will probably be about a 3 to 4 month time lag for each area once they have fiber installed. You're not going to get access to that service immediately. There's time that is going to be after that is installed before you can actually obtain the service. I have their PowerPoint in this presentation, and I know they have a representative here to give you a little more detail about what they're doing. The intent of this agenda item is just to present it one time and just give you an overview of their overall project. And then as they go through these different design areas, working through different sections of the town, they'll be working with the town staff, namely through the engineering department with right-of-way permits and, coordinating things like silt fencing or inspecting existing facilities to ensure that there's not any damage, that sites are restored to their pre-construction condition, traffic control, notification of residents in each affected design area. So that's all going to be handled with the town through individual right-of-way permits. So that's kind of their process. So with that, I'll turn it over to LCUB, but I do have one citizen that signed up for this, so let me go ahead and,
We need a first and a second.
oh, that's right, yep.
Can we have a motion for agenda item number 5?
So moved.
I'll second.
So with that said, Mark, you said we do have somebody signed up for public comment.
Yes, I do. Jennifer Morris.
You hear me?
We can hear you. Good evening. Thank
good
you
evening.
for coming.
Thank you. I'm here as a proponent or an advocate.
Your name and address?
Oh, okay. Well, right now I live at 1940 Hope Creek Road. That is actually the Lenore City address. However, I own 2 homes in the Sellview subdivision that we use as rental property. I grew up in the Farragut community, went to schools here. I've moved away 3 times, but I went to school here from K through 12 and have made Farragut in this area my home most of my life. We moved about 7 years ago. If you take the Watt Road exit, make a right, 2.5 miles. This was in about 2015-16. We'd owned property over there on Milton Hill Lake about 20 years before we built on it. We had no clue what we were getting into. I'm okay with wells, but I'm not okay being cut off from society. And that started my mission of trying to find, communication. We didn't have good cell service. We didn't have any internet to be called for. We had Usenet and VSAT, which is $250 a month. Can't even open an email. And at that point, I'm a teacher in Farragut schools as well. I teach at Farragut Middle School. And at that point, we had stopped ordering textbooks for children. And I was thinking in my head, and I had children, we had our children kind of late. I had middle and high school children then. They were pretty much finished with college now or getting close. But thinking these midnight assignments that teachers are assigning. They were assigning assignments due at midnight. If you don't have internet at your home, you're driving out. If your teenager has practice till 9 o'clock, comes home, they're doing homework, you got to go somewhere at 10:30. Now, you might be asking why I'm here, because we lived in Brixworth before we moved. We own 2 houses. I teach at Farragut, but it was like night and day. There are areas in the Farragut community still like that today, and it is not fun. And I wrote to every legislator. I've met with Rand McNally twice. I've talked to Marsha Blackburn's lawyers. I can't get her on the phone because she doesn't want to commit to anything. I've talked to numerous people on this topic numerous times because there's a lot of money out there. I'm 2.5 miles off the interstate. And the only people, I didn't know anything about them, but the only people that really would listen to me was LCUB. And all you have to do is go home and Google EPB. If you know what EPB is, utility company in Chattanooga. Tech companies in San Francisco write about the quality of internet they have. And let me tell you, internet is an essential utility, not just for school, not for just streaming. All sorts of medical issues arise, whether you've got young kids to elderly, they need the internet. We just had a little bit of water damage in our basement. Everything's online. It's education, it's work, and we all know that from COVID. I saw it coming. They built a building, I believe, somewhere around 2018, so they had the fiber out to their substations. They were a little leery about getting into it. I have begged. There have been, and I'm not going to mention them by name, but the biggest in the business has gotten millions of dollars to put something on my street. Never happened. They're not held accountable. Internet is an essential utility, and we need to be thankful that they're coming into this community because no one will ever go without it again. And it's not just going without it, it's the quality of it. Everybody will have the same quality with municipal internet. If you Google EPB again, they have quite a bit of the market share, and they did that honestly. And, there's communities in Knoxville, because I went to the KUB meeting as well, just as an advocate for municipal internet, because after a long time of studying all this, it's just the obvious answer. And there's people in Knoxville, if you've got a community that doesn't have high growth, some of the other companies are not going to go in and upgrade. You get a municipal, everybody's on the same grid, everybody gets the same upgrades, and we know technology changes. So I'm a huge advocate for this because I think it's essential utility. You've got people all over the place. In 1930s, and I know I'm about done, but in the 1930s, they passed the Rural Electrification Act because electricity became an essential utility. For good, for bad, whatever it is. It's the same thing. We don't have people having to light candles in their house anymore. We don't have people having to do pop lights with batteries to run their house. Everybody has electricity. Everybody needs the same quality internet because we're all doing the same types of things. So I am a huge advocate. They have been wonderful. I was their first customer, which I'm, thankful for. But again, I didn't know these guys until I got involved with this. So you all should be grateful. And I also know, I don't know if you all know this, but they are Lenoir City Utilities that provides utilities up to about Cedar Bluff Road. And back in the 50s or so, KUB didn't want to come down here. I mean, I was born in '66, so, this was farm country back then, if anybody was back here with me back then. And KUB didn't want to come back down here and put electrical lines and all this farm country that they didn't see any value in. LCUB decided to do that. So we need to be grateful for them. For doing this, and I hope you all support them. The other thing I'm going to say, and I'll close with this, I often think of, if you all remember, my husband's from Houston, and if you remember they got a really big ice storm about 2 or 3 years ago, and if you follow that, I know everybody talks free market, but you're not free market if you're getting money from the government, and that's what a lot of these private communication companies are doing. But Houston and Texas has tried to privatize their electrical grid. And I don't know if you remember, when they had an ice storm, people were getting $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 electrical bills because, they were using it and they had signed all these plans and everything. When you're dealing with essential utilities, you need to be dealing with a municipality where their CEO's not making $40 million a year and they're not playing games with everybody. So these guys, to me, will deliver. They're following EPB's model, and I just think it's a great thing for this community. I do. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's all that signed up for
That's
this.
all that signed up. Okay, do we have the applicant present? Would you care to give us your thoughts and comments?
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for allowing
Could you
LCUB.
please state your name and your address, please?
Yes, I'm Jeremy Walden. I'm the director of the electric department at LCUB. I actually live in Hardin Valley, so I'm at 10831 Hunters Knoll Lane in Hardin Valley. But as I said, I'm the director of the electric department. You asked, why is the electric department up here speaking about fiber optics or broadband? Well, what we want to do, first of all, getting everybody here, is let you folks know what we're doing. We're not going to bombard your area and destroy the looks and the aesthetics and mess everybody's yards up and do all that stuff. It's serving multiple purposes. And the electric department is a vital piece of this because it is overall a grid modernization project, the installation of the fiber optics. So if you go to the next slide, Mark, we did a calculation on the front end of this with our business model. About 83.6% of this fiber network is going to be utilized for electric purposes, about 16.4% for broadband purposes. So what that says is to everybody is no matter what would have happened if we hadn't got approved for from the state comptroller to do the broadband services, whatever, we were going to move forward with the electrical grid modernization project. Now, it may have taken us 10, 15 years to fulfill that dream of putting the fiber optics out there versus now we're getting the luxury of getting the broadband revenue back in, which back to the electric department. Electric department's leasing a lot of this fiber to the broadband division, and they pay us back in lease payments and utilization fees. So we get to speed that timeline up and modernize our grid because we're receiving those dollars back in funds. And as Ms. Morris pointed out, it's just like EPB's model, and we've been working very closely with them. We've also been working, we got some representatives from Fiberize. You saw their name up here. When you hear Fiberize, you can just think of LCUB. They're our contractor, consultants, all the above. They're coming in with their teams and they're helping us design and implement and construct and everything and project manage this whole project. So when you hear the word Fiberize or the team Fiberize or the company, that you can consider them part of LCUB. But to speak more on this, in this slide, I'll go through it really quickly so I don't take everybody's time up. But for the grid modernization project, it helps us with things that I'll get to the next slide, but we've got some pictures up here to show you. This is a controller that's one of our smart switches in the field that you could possibly see anywhere you drive on our system. Getting fiber optics to things like this, and this is just an example so you can visualize it, it is critical to us in the future. So Mark, if you go to the next one. So this basically shows out, Mark mentioned all these things when he was given the summary, what it's going to do for our electric grid. From future of AMI to understanding DER, which is distributed energy resources, solar panels, and if anybody ever puts windmills in here in this area or anything like that, alternative energy sources, EVs, getting data back that we'll need that, all the data that we'll have to compile and do to operate it as a utility in the future will need that fiber optics speed and bandwidth to be able to process everything. The biggest thing right now, what that last picture shows you, is our smart grid, which is something that EPB did, and theirs is it'll help our self-healing grid. Helps us get customers on really quick versus sending physical folks out to put your lights back on. We can have a grid that uses this fiber optic technology that it will speak back quick enough to where it will heal itself to a point and minimize the number of customers out optimal. So it'll only take out so many customers with putting in smart devices and switches and the brains connected all together with fiber optics, telling the system when to open, when to close, and when to do all this instead of somebody manually doing that. It does it automatically, and an outage for a person can go from, might take an hour to 2 hours, it could go to 30 seconds to a minute. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about with the smart grid. We even have a pilot project going on with that right now in the Turkey Creek area, which includes some of Farragut. I don't think you have the video, Mark, that'll work this. I don't think so. But this is a really cool video if we ever got the chance to see it. But well,
Maybe I do.
you got a play button. This is a storm that blew through on Chattanooga's system, and this shows their system. All their customers lit up. It may not play.
No, it's not play.
It's okay. EPB plays this all the time. It's a storm that blew through on their system, and it shows how quickly their self-healing grid responded using fiber optics and things like that, communicating that instead of having, I don't know if it even said, I can't read that well enough to see if it has the number of customers that were out. It shows how quickly it went out and came back on and filtered through the whole thing until it was the last was just a few thousand customers out versus half their entire system. So it's a pretty neat, thing to show. So we talk about all this to show you that there is a major part of this that helps the electric grid, which ultimately helps all the ratepayers in the town of Farragut and everybody else to have quality power, and we can assure that we're moving in the right direction. Now, I think we may get into some broadband stuff here. I may have to rely on my experts back here because this is where I get a little bit out of my element. But one thing you want to know, with this we get to offer internet, and it is municipal internet, and we are using the EPB model. We're working closely with KUB. They're doing the same thing, very similar. So we're all working together as municipalities to bring this to people, as Ms. Morris so graciously pointed out, that what we can do for everyone. One thing that it shows here is we will offer symmetrical speeds. What that means is if you go to X telecom provider today, they may tell you that you're getting a gig speed, but that may be only a download speed, not an upload speed. And you ask, well, you may be getting 25 meg on an upload, or maybe not even that much. So download speeds are what you consume in your house, watching TV or whatever. But this is a chart, and all of the commission has this in their files, that shows what that upload, the symmetrical, why that's important when you're working from your home and you're uploading files and you're exchanging files and you're emailing people. That's the speed you need to do when you're on Zoom calls or WebEx calls or things like that. That's the speed you need so you don't get glitchy when you're talking to somebody and it starts jerking and then you pause and nobody can understand you. That's things we'll provide consistently to everybody in the system, not just certain people. So that's kind of what this slide is showing, is that process and what goes on there. Go ahead, Mark. To give you an idea of what speeds, gigabit speeds will do, so if I haven't said it, our minimal offering to people will be 1 gig symmetrical, so that's 1 gig download, 1 gig upload. To give you an idea of the speed of that, if you're downloading 10 songs, that's 0.3 seconds. If you get to 10 TV episodes, that's 30 seconds. If you get to 2-hour HD movie, it's 56 seconds versus some of the others may take, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe an hour or something like that if you're down to, 50 meg or something to download that kind of stuff. So that just gives you an idea of how fast this thing is. It's fast enough for most everybody that would ever need anything. So again, these are just some facts. You can read I won't go through every one of these, but just shows, and we gathered a lot of this from EPB's data, that how it helps economic growth in the area, how it helps real estate, how it helps, obviously your educational facilities with the things that you can do and offer, and obviously with healthcare, with telemedicine, it takes a lot of bandwidth for that. So your hospitals, your medical facilities, this will all benefit all that. So go ahead, Mark. One thing that we've already been working with your town engineers and Mark in the commission is we've been planning and working and organizing what permitting processes we have to do. So this is a slide just assuring what we're going to do. So when we break up this area, does the next one, Mark, show a map? Go ahead. So this, if you see the kind of cream colored there, that's the town of Farragut. And you see all the little squares, or oblong shapes that are broken up into different spaces. That's what we call design areas. So that's how we do this. We attack this. We follow, we do design areas, and that's how we build, that's how we design. And we've got these broken up into all these different areas, and it follows the substations out. Everything always follows the electric. So if the electric's overhead, your fiber's going to be overhead. If your electric's underground, the fiber's going to be underground. So if there's overhead poles, we're going to attach to those overhead poles. Won't look any different. If it's underground, we got some pictures to show that in a little bit. But anyway, these design areas are what we're going to do. So each design area will probably, I don't know the exact process, and that's things we'll work with Mark and town engineering on, but we'll have permitting for every one of those. We'll go through all the processes. We'll make sure we follow everything. We make sure that we communicate with all the people that will be affected by this ahead of time, that we're going to be digging in their yards or not, or that we're going to be trucks out installing on poles. Everything will, contractors will have LCUB designation on them. We'll follow all those guidelines. So that's basically what we're telling you here. And this is the area. Go ahead, Mark. This is the permitting package. You all have this in your packet. This is stuff that we would submit, and this is just an example of what we would submit for a permit. And it just, there's an aerial permit package, I think, so forth and so on. So we totaled everything in the Farragut area that we would need, and I think it's, I can't read, I'm so blind. I think it's 36 permits in 2024 and 30 in 2025 for a total of 66 permits that we would have to go through, we're looking at. So, and we got those broken down by quarters. Of course, that's a plan. Things happen. We'll see what happens. We'll go from there. But that gives you an idea of how many permits we'll be submitting in this area. Traffic control, we will always have traffic control submittals and plans to everybody, so that I'm assuming by this we're going to be using AWP for the traffic control contractor, and that way we do not hinder or inconvenience any citizens or residents of the area, and we try to keep things moving. So, as an example, this is a high level of, and you'll see that in your packet. You can look at that, but this is a good diagram just to show you what some of the different things are and how the fiber is going to run, where our fiber is. The top of that being our electrical lines, and then you come down and you see the fiber, and it says ADSS cable. That's a fancy word for all dielectric self-supporting cable. But then it'll show you down on the poles our storage racks and how we go into the house, which is kind of like your fiber meter and things like that. So this is a good diagram, just give you an illustration of how this stuff flows from the power lines into the homes. If you go to the next one, here's some pictures in the top left that I'm looking at. I guess it would be you too. There's a storage loop on a pole, so it drops down. Has a storage loop down there. That's just coiled up extra fiber, so when we have breaks and things like that, that we have that slack there that we can pull it down to the ground real easily, splice it real quick, and get it back up and running. So it's a convenient way to do that. The one right below that, that is an ONT, yeah, and optical network terminal. So that's kind of like your meter point. Think of an electric meter on the side of your house. That's where the fiber goes in. So you've probably already seen stuff like that on the side of your house, a little gray box, pretty inconspicuous. And then we've got in the top right corner a multi-service terminal, I think, or yeah. So that's kind of where we hook up our services. We just punch in there with a cable and pull it out and run it overhead. When we have those, we have the same thing underground, right? So you may see some of those things on poles. So that's just some pictures of some things that you will see out in the field that we have. So underground, there's just some examples of what we will do. We're going to be boring everything in if it's underground. So when we go into subdivisions, we've done it several times already, and we're only going to get better. By the time we get to your area, we should be experts. So, and if that's not true, I'll put it on those guys. But yes, we will end up going into every subdivision, and if they're underground, we will put it underground, and we will be boring it all in so that we won't be digging trenches and things like that. If you go to the next picture, that'll show you some examples of what you're going to see. So you see like some of the boxes over here on the right picture is a pull box hand hole, service hole. That's what you're going to see in your yard, right? So it's ground mounted flush. We try to follow the electric, so it's always going to be close to the transformer. You see some on the left. We will put everybody's property back the way it was. We see a lot of things that we've done so far. People see us come in, they see those holes being punched and guys digging in their yard because they have to bore in, and they get real worried, and then within 3 days we got it covered up and it looks like nobody's been there. And so everybody calms down. So we've got a pretty efficient process, but that's some pictures of what some of the stuff in people's yards will look like. And we have, and this is in your packet and you can follow this, but we have a site restoration process that we do if people are not satisfied. We have our director of broadband here, and he can provide contacts and things to Mark and the town engineers and whoever needs it to make sure that everybody has that information and how that process works in the cases where people are not satisfied with what they're seeing, because we will make it right no matter what. So go ahead, Mark. Big thing is, as Ms. Morris has already stated out, this is municipal, so we're local. We're not, your support will be local. We'll have 24/7 monitoring. When you call, you'll be talking to one of us, people like us, one of your neighbors, whoever it may be, to work on things. And again, fast, friendly, and municipal service. There's no deals, no contracts, no nothing. It's just like electric. It's you get what you get, and you know, we may not be the lowest, we may not be the highest, but we're not offering contracts and deals. When you get a price, that's what it is, and we hope to keep it there forever. I think EPB hadn't changed their rate in 15 years or something they just keep giving people faster speeds. And we hope to be doing very much this similar thing. So no games, no gimmicks. Everybody gets the same thing. You have options, but everybody gets the same thing. And I think it's a promising thing. You'll see some of these door knockers around when we come to your area. We'll put these on doors to let folks know that we're coming through, and there's contact information and all that stuff on there. Then they can scan that code and get more information. So look for those. Those will be there. Go ahead, Mark.
That's all I've got on your.
All right, so, sorry, that was a lot to run through, but just quickly wanted to give that overview, and I thank you for your time. And now, if you got any questions for any of us, we'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walden. If you don't mind, would you mind staying at the podium? I'm going to open up the floor for comments and questions to the Planning Commission, starting off with Mayor Williams.
I don't really have anything. I'm kind of familiar with this because we've been through it for the past number of years with the good, the bad, and ugly of some of these, and we look forward to your style of installing, and I'm talking about fiberglass back there. So that's basically what I've got.
Commissioner Meyer, do you have any questions or comments?
Sure. Are you thinking that you're going to run down kind of arterials first and then start spreading out? When I say arterials, have you put together your priority of these design areas?
Do you want to speak to that, Stacy, or? Yes. Yes, we have. Ultimately, it's wherever a substation is located is kind of how they follow as our electrical feeds go out. But yes, there is thought and process behind that. And I may be getting in trouble, but it's probably number of folks in that area, amount of overhead, amount of underground. There's lots of factors that go into that, of how they. And if we want to get into that more, I think
it's probably premature to get into that
Yeah.
level of detail, but I just didn't know how, kind of what your thoughts were, trying to, run down Kingston Pike with some of those. But it sound, if you're starting at substations, you got Grizzly Chapel and Boyd Station and Concord Road. There's you got a
Yeah.
little substation over kind of Turkey Creek. And
Yeah.
So that makes sense, kind of working out from those.
Yep.
The other question I had, are you thinking that your business customers will pay the same as your residential customers, or they're going to pay a different fee?
No, there are different rates, and business.
The same that may still pay a higher rate?
No, they get different offerings. So when you pay higher, you get different offerings. But I don't know if we have our offering stuff here to go over. Residential is pretty standard. We'll have a residential package. It's one gig for 65, basically. It's 2.5 gig for 149. Is that right? You'll catch me lying on that one. It's on our website. So, and then we'll have a completely separate commercial offering. So the commercial offerings get a little more detailed, right? So we'll have commercial sales folks that kind of go over that with folks that need a little more, depending on what your business is. Some businesses may not need more, but.
1 gig in itself is pretty fast.
Yeah.
I think that's going to solve most people's needs.
Yeah, we'll offer 2.5 gig, 1 gig as a standard on residential and commercial as well. And then the commercial can do many things. It can go to up to 10 gig on commercial, and I think we can even do direct serve up to 400 gig. But that's if you needed a direct line into somebody.
Maybe a hospital or something is on the only one I can think
The
of.
10 gig, I would think, is somewhere where the hospitals would be looking at things like that. Yes, absolutely.
Call center would be 400 again.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably data centers, things like that, right? Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And it's exciting to see this. I've been a little familiar with it. the kind of rumors of it for a few years, and we're delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
So,
Commissioner Green, do you have any comments, questions?
And is the billing a part of the electric bill, or would it be separate billing?
It'll be separate billing,
Okay.
yeah.
Vice Mayor Pavlin.
Just a few things. I know we are currently in a CMAQ project where we're hanging fiber and we're boring for that too. Are you guys trying to coordinate that at all? Are we so far ahead in our CMAQ project that it's?
I'm not sure. I'd have to talk with Daryl about that. We are pretty far ahead of them on that at this point, but.
That's the other question, was when do you guys plan on starting?
So the permits will be submitted in 2024, 2025, so it's still.
Oh, okay, so you're still a little bit out. Okay.
Yeah,
We're not waiting on our CMAQ project anymore.
No.
they probably couldn't share conduit anyway.
Yeah,
Well, just
so-
if you're gonna be there ripping up the ground,
Well,
it
that's-
would be
yeah.
great if everybody was ripping up the ground together and then.
wishful thinking.
Yes, I
Timing's
know.
the odds of.
Nothing ever comes together. It's just never that easy. Thank you, that's all I have.
Vice Chairman St. Clair.
Question, maybe rolling out this, I think the excitement would be there for a lot of the folks in the community, in particular, you know, the residential users that all have this option, because I know people struggle with problems, and even the ones that have fiber currently. Does your website explain kind of, okay, they hear about this coming, and they see it coming to the, say, the transformer area in their neighborhood? Does your website talk about how it gets to their house and how that means how they get rid of what they have to get to transfer to you? Is there a way that you all can kind of explain that? I think the PR in that area would be very helpful for the community
I
in
think-
general to understand that.
Yeah, I think we have everything on our website right
website.
now. I think you can even, I don't know if it's updated, but where you can put in your address and it'll tell you roughly when we think we'll be in that location.
But it'll also tell you how you, once it's there, how
Yeah,
you get it.
yeah, it's not gonna be exact dates. It'll be spring, fall, whatever. But yeah, that's, if we've not got something like that, we will take that back as a suggestion. But I would say we'll have stuff like that that shows you exactly how to get on our system and how to, you know, look and see. We'll help if you've got contracts with other people and what you have to go through. We'll have customer support that will provide all that. But yes, certainly on the internet, you will be able to sign fully up through the internet that will guide you through every step of getting signed up.
And then I guess back to your 1 gig at the house, there's a big difference once it gets to you inside their house.
Yes.
Whether it's your Ethernet cable
Co-
or your computer or whatever device you have with it, be able to handle that speed. So a lot of people get disappointed once they think they're getting 1 gig, but that's not what they actually have.
Well, I don't want to speak, yeah, and I'll let Ms. Moore speak in a second because she's going to attest to this, but I don't want to speak out of turn on this, but we will be offering a managed Wi-Fi system in this as well, which will provide a mesh, is mesh the right word, mesh system in your house. Because what happens to a lot of people, including myself, I have one of the big providers and I pay for a gig, but when it comes into my house, even though I have Ethernet throughout my house, it connects to a router and then distributes Wi-Fi in the air, and it drops down, like I was telling them the other night, I was getting about 50 meg, and I'm supposed to be getting a gig. So we offer managed Wi-Fi services. We will be offering that. So there won't be the drop-off if we're managing your Wi-Fi services of that Wi-Fi.
I think that's just an important part of
Yeah.
part of your rollout.
I've got a speed test right here, 930 and 929.
Yeah.
And that was with an Ethernet cable. It's running above 900 every time and about 500 with Wi-Fi right now.
Yeah. And she's our first customer / test customer, so we're working out kinks on her too. Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. So,
It's just the whole
Well,
thing, and
I
I'm
can't-
not educated, but I run speed tests and it has been fantastic. But they're
Yeah.
running it to the home.
yeah.
Can't underestimate the benefit to the community for not only just personal use as well as economic.
Yeah.
It's been a real catalyst in Chattanooga.
Yes, very much so.
I don't have any more.
I've just got a couple questions. One, about the design areas as they come online, you spoke to that a little bit about the timing. I know it's, you're not going to just flip the switch. Obviously, you're test customer number one, ground zero, if you will. So as those design areas come on, you'll start flipping the switches as each is permitted and the work is completed. So, and going back to the notification process, I know you presented the broadband door knocker that you use. What's your process for notifying the residents when they can expect the equipment to show up in the front yard? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 days?
As soon as they start seeing paint on the ground, that's a sure indication. Let signs up.
Okay. So it sounds like there's signs that we put up. We give plenty of notification. Another thing that people will see, especially underground, and one of those pictures showed the paint on the sidewalk.
Yeah, right.
When they start seeing the paint on the sidewalk along with our signs and door knockers, they know that that's an indication that we're coming into the area. But we try to communicate as much as we can to people. The issue is we have, to finish a project like this in Farragut area, like we said, ambitiously, like a year, we have a lot of crews out there working at one time, and they're in a lot of different areas usually.
Well, it's a large project, and I think the community is really going to embrace having this technology. And can you provide an email address where the public can shoot inquiries to find out more about the project, other than just going on the website, unless all that information is there? Because you're gonna get a lot of calls and a lot of inquiries on, number one, the timing and the things that we've discussed, how it's going to impact them.
Yeah, I'll let Jason Tuttle, he's the director of our broadband, I'll let him communicate with Mark and get that distributed to all of you, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, I've got one more. Right now, there's a whole lot of us that have a email address that ends in @tds dot. Okay, is there going to be an LCUB dot?
No, we're not offering.
You're not going to offer that? Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Are there any further questions or comments from the commission? That said, we have a motion by Mayor Williams, a second by Commissioner Meyer. All those in favor say yes.
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 No noes. So moved with a vote of 6 yes, 0 noes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walden. Thank you guys for showing up tonight. Appreciate your explanation, and I look forward to it. Next item on the agenda, we're moving down to item number 10, and that is discussion and public hearing on adding the requirement for a concept plan in association with a zoning to the S1 Community Service Zoning District.
Okay. Well, this item was discussed last month for workshop purposes to see if the Planning Commission thought this was a good idea, and you did. So the kind of the origin of having a concept plan in this zoning district is that this zoning district is kind of an institutional zoning district, and it can allow for pretty large footprint buildings. And so it also is kind of intended to be a transitional zoning district oftentimes between a more intense kind of development like commercial, heavy commercial, and then lower density residential. So having a concept plan with a rezoning request, similar to what we do currently in the town center district, planned commercial, and the open space mixed residential, it gives the community an idea of what the development is intended to be. You know, what are the uses, what are generally the scale of the buildings, the height, and all those kinds of things, before a property is actually rezoned to permit uses that are provided for in that zoning district. So as you may remember, 2 or 3 years ago, I think we adopted a similar process in the open space mixed residential overlay because it has the opportunity to have both attached and detached single family. And the commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen wanted to have a good idea of what that breakdown would look like before they actually rezoned the property. And then we also built into that language some explanation of what, if somebody came and made a change to the master concept plan, then we categorize those changes into major versus minor. And if it's a major change, then it would have to come back to the Planning Commission. And if y'all are okay with it and recommend that to the board, then that's fine. But if that change is not approved, then basically it could result in the rezoning being nullified and reverting back to the previous zoning district. So I tried to explain in this ordinance 2311 what a major versus a minor change would be as it would apply to this zoning district. It's a little bit different than the OSMR. And basically those changes deal with mostly the scale of the building, the nature of the uses that someone's proposing, the height and the placement of buildings, and tried to give an applicant some modest flexibility to make some, minor changes, because as you get into more detailed design, you may need to shift your building a few feet in one direction or the other, or maybe increase the height very modestly. But I tried to establish some parameters for those that would consider those to be major versus minor. So that's basically it with what's in the ordinance. Again, it's very similar language to what was approved for the OSMR, just more or less tailored toward the S1 zoning district. So if any of you all have any specific questions related to this language, I'd be happy to try to explain those. The staff does recommend approval of resolution PC-23-10, which recommends approval of ordinance 23-11 to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.
Move to approve.
Have you received any comments? No comments with
Who's
this
second?
agenda
I need
item?
a second on
I don't
that,
think we have a
guess.
second yet.
Second.
So we had Louise and Ed. Okay. I did not receive any comments from citizens on this item.
Okay, with that said, no comments then, I'll open it up for questions and comments. Vice Mayor Pavlin.
Thank you. I appreciate your work on this, Mark. I brought this to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen a couple of months ago. This has long been a concern of mine when we approved the villages, which is a pretty massive project, and we didn't have a concept plan requirement to approve it. It's kind of stuck in the back of my mind that, yes, that worked out well, and we approved the transitions were there, which was what we liked, the villas all the way around. But he wasn't necessarily tied to that design because it wasn't approved with the rezoning. So as I thought about how we're going through this, and there's a transitional element to this zoning district, I thought it would be wise to have a concept plan approval like we did with OSMR and like we have with PCD. Just to give the residents who, in a transition, there are residents that are more than likely going to be impacted by what this is going to look like. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that you took some time to really think about major and minor changes, because that's been kind of a sticking point for us is from the land use plan perspective, what's major and what's minor. So I appreciate that. My one question is the mechanism for if they get an approval of a plan, you're not number 3, then they want to change the plan, and that change doesn't get approved. Instead of going back to the original plan, at that point, it would go back to the original zoning? Is that what the
Yes.
intention is?
If the board doesn't approve the major change, then it would revert back to the previous zoning.
Okay.
Because it was zoned with the understanding that these major changes weren't going to occur.
Yeah.
Now, if
Okay.
you all approve a major change, you evaluate it and work with the community, and the major change doesn't seem to, harm what you've done, then you can move forward and and just approve the major change as part of your site plan approval. But it would revert back if you don't.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we put in with the OSMR as
Yeah.
well.
All right. That's all I have.
Vice Chair St. Clair.
I would echo Louise's comments, and particularly the fact that if you're looking at a campus-like area of an S1 zone, that you need a bigger picture of what actually is planned there that they can use in the process. I have only one comment, I guess, from the text. Several times in the where it talks about major changes as identified during the site plan review process, and then it says shall require re-review and approval from the Board of Mayor Alderman and would include, et cetera, et cetera. Do we need to spell out during the site review plan process that the Planning Commission is a formal part of that? Or is that just totally implied there? We spelled out the Board of Mayor and Alderman, but we have not spelled out the Planning
We
Commission.
can say during the site plan review process with the planning commission, if you want, if that makes it more clear.
Well, I think it makes it consistent whether we're
That's
going to
fine.
talk about the BOMA, then we talk about
If
the
everyone's
Planning
okay
Commission.
with that, that's
Yeah.
easy.
I think that's a good change.
Yep.
It would go through the planning commission anyway,
Yeah.
like the PCD does.
I mean, it's implied with site review process, but I'd rather spell it out.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's clear for the applicant.
Yeah, because I do reference the planning commission in the next paragraph related to the site plan review process, so that would be consistent.
That's all I had.
Commissioner Meyer.
You've covered it, Mark. I appreciate everything that you've included in this. You've done exactly what we've asked you to do.
Commissioner Green.
No comment.
Mayor Williams.
You guys have covered, got the questions covered.
Okay, so we have a motion, Vice Mayor Pavlin moved for approval, seconded by Vice Chairman St. Clair. Do we need to add the amendment and a new motion, or?
Well, I do have one person that just asked to speak to this item, so I
Okay,
know it's a
very
little
good.
out of order, but I have John Holzreger.
Mr. Holzreger, you know the routine.
Holstrager, 345 Bernie Circle. I'm very appreciative of MPC doing this. I think this is a really good step. Mark, could you talk just a little bit about what's the difference between a major and a minor change? That's my only question.
The major change, I tried to establish some objective criteria for that, so that the planning commission would, have a little bit of guidance. I have 4 different elements that would maybe consider something to be major. The first one would be the uses are different from what's on the concept layout plan. Secondly, the building footprints are more than 10% larger than those shown on the concept layout plan. So we're dealing with the scale of the building. Related to the scale, the building height is not more than 5 feet higher than those shown on the concept layout plan. And then fourth would be that the buildings are more than 10 feet closer to the boundary of a property that's zoned residential. So it gives an applicant some modest flexibility because there are going to be some adjustments that you need to make once you get more detailed topographic information or whatever. But, not to the extent where it is likely to compromise the intent or what they showed and conveyed on their concept layout plan to get the rezoning.
So aesthetics would be more of a minor change than how the building appears, the facade of the building?
I don't have that as something there. We have, of course, the architectural design guidelines that they would have to follow, and the masonry percentages and all the other elements that we look at as part of the site plan review. But I don't currently have anything specific to that as far as a major change.
Okay. Thank you.
That's all that's signed up.
That's all we have signed up for. So
Can I
again,
say one thing, just
Yeah,
real
y-
quickly?
yes, please.
John, would you do me a favor, please? This goes back to us for, you don't have to stand up there. Just, I would like it if you reviewed this language for major changes. You guys are living with it. This goes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for 2 readings. We certainly can make amendments. If you can think of something and you look at that and say, okay, I'm uneasy about this, could you address that? And we may be making changes to dial in on these major changes at the board level anyway. So just get it out to your residents and give us some feedback would be great. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman Russ.
you're very welcome. So we, Yep. Mayor Williams?
Yeah, did you address, Mark, did you address amendment for,
No, we have a motion from Vice Mayor Powell and a second from Commissioner
I'm
St.
going
Clair.
to amend my motion
Okay.
to include this, Commissioner St. Clair's amendments to include the
With the Planning
Planning
Commission.
Commission
Yeah.
as part of that process.
I certainly second the amendment.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No noes? Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to agenda item number 6. Discussion and public hearing on request for approval of a proposed 160-foot tall macro cellular tower to be situated in the northeast corner of the West End Center at 156 West End Avenue, Zone C1, Vogue Towers Partners, 7 LLC applicant.
Okay,
Was
this
the
particular
applicant
item.
able to arrive?
Yeah, they are here. They're both here
We're all
now.
here. Okay, good. How was traffic? Oh, I'm sorry to hear. I'm sure the weather didn't help out much with that either. Okay.
Yeah, this particular item, we introduced this at the workshop session at the May 18 Planning Commission meeting. And the staff noted that in our telecommunications provisions in Chapter 4 of the zoning ordinance, when we amended those a few years ago, we took into account the kind of oftentimes unique siting issues that these macro towers can run into. There's sometimes a lot of people that are concerned about them, and and they can become kind of a not in my backyard kind of exercise. So what we built into the language of the zoning ordinance was the ability to have the Planning Commission consider the context, the service needs, the placement of the facility in relation to residential or other existing developments or anticipated future development. And then if they wanted to do so, they could consider certain waivers to different requirements that are provided for in the telecommunications ordinance that deal with macro towers. So with this particular project, initially they were going to place the tower. This tower is kind of at the back northeast corner of the West End Center, kind of the back of the Goodwill building. And that's this space right here is Goodwill, the back of it. So you come in off of West End Avenue before you get to the intermediate, middle, and high school properties to the north. And you come back on this access drive to their proposed compound here. Originally, it was a little further in the corner, but there's some existing mature, namely pine trees here along the school boundary that we were trying to save. So they ended up adjusting the placement of the pole. But to do that, they had to revise an existing stormwater detention basin, and that's in this general area here. The pole itself, the compound is this kind of square area. The pole is actually situated right about where that dot is. So it's kind of in the southwest corner of the compound, mainly because of the detention area. So they've had to go in and redesign part of this detention. They have a short retaining wall that they're going to be constructing in part of that. And they have submitted their drainage calculations and plan through our town engineer. I think he's comfortable with what they're doing as far as modifying the detention basin. It's an old detention basin, and it really doesn't function all that well. I mean, it's okay, but they're actually going to create a little bit more storage with what they're proposing in relation to what's there now. So hopefully it will actually improve how that detention area functions. So that's this is kind of a blown up version of the compound. This is the little retaining wall that they'll have to build to try to bench that work in, and obviously regrading part of this existing basin to get that additional storage and to be able to get their equipment and the tower, which again is right here, into the particular compound. This would be the initial accessory structures that would service the compound in this area here below, and to the right would be space for the co-locations that the tower will have. They'll have at least 3 co-locations on the tower. As required in our antennas and towers section, we do require a stealth application on new macro towers, and they're proposing a monopine. This is kind of a generic version. I'm told that what they are trying to have it look like is actually more tree-like looking, and this is actually a macro tower, but it does have a pretty good canopy on it. It looks fairly tree-like because the canopy edges are not like a bottle brush. They're more like a natural tree drip line. So I think that's what they're going to strive to achieve. That they would probably start that lowest branch around the height of adjacent existing trees. So 75 to 80 feet would probably be where they start the stealth application and then work their way up. Tower itself's 160 feet plus a 5-foot antenna at the top. So that's kind of an overview of what they're requesting. There's a number of waivers that they have requested due to the fact that they're trying to fit a tower in an area that has a need for the tower, and they've looked at other locations. And this is really the space that works out the best and has minimal impact on nearby residential and other existing development in this particular area. I think they initially tried to place the tower on the school property, but were unsuccessful. As almost probably all of you know, if you're on the school's property, there is a need for improved cellular service. So that's what they're trying to address. So with the waivers that they're requesting, the staff recommends before we take action on the tower and compound site plan itself, we'll need to review and take action on each of their requested waivers and what they are and what is the staff's recommendation and why, and then you all would need to act on those separately. So if you want, I'll go through these waivers. Would you want to just me review a waiver and you take action on it at that time?
Yes,
or do you want me to
please.
go through all of them first? Or okay, just go through one at a time. All right.
Mark, there are 6 waivers, is that?
There's 4 sections of waivers.
And each?
4 waivers, yeah.
Yeah.
4, okay, so we'll treat them each.
And then we'll go to the site plan after that. yeah.
Okay, very good.
We've talked about these in
Do we
kind
have
of,
any?
I do not have anyone that signed up for this particular item. And I have sent out notifications to all the property owners within 1,000 feet of the proposed tower. And I haven't heard from anyone, so I'm not really sure.
First of all, before we go through the waivers, do we need a motion on the site plan and then go through the waivers, or do the waivers and then
We gotta do the waivers first.
an amended motion?
Because the others
We gotta do the
contingent on the
waivers first,
waivers.
and then you vote on the site plan.
Very good. Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different, and it took a while to kind of go through these waivers to put this staff recommendation together. But, so the first section, and all these are from the towers portion of the zoning ordinance in Chapter 4, Section 3. The first one is that towers shall not be permitted in the area identified as mixed-use town center. The staff does recommend approval of this waiver. If you look at the tower's location in relation to where the mixed-use town center land use extends, it's right at the edge, the northeast corner of the mixed-use town center, barely in it. Really, the existing development around where the tower is proposed is not really, it's been there for a long time, and it's not really a town center plan of development in that part of the property. And you got the schools to the north, the putt-putt golf to the east, and the west end, existing west end shopping center to the kind of the south and west. So it's not like it's closer to the core of our mixed-use town center. Obviously, if it were proposed in that location, the staff would have some concerns about that, but this is pretty discreet. And then secondly, again, considering the condition and the unique context, there is a cellular service deficiency in this general area. And in looking at trying to move the tower in other locations, you're likely to move it either closer to existing buildings or more developed areas, closer to residential property if you try to move it to the north or to the east, and probably closer to more visible locations if you try to move it to the west, closer to West End Avenue. So they've tried to, in the staff's opinion, put it in an area that minimizes visual impact. And from the staff's perspective, doesn't compromise what we're trying to achieve in the mixed-use town center. So we do recommend approval of that waiver.
I'm going to move to approve this waiver based on the location at the edge of the MUTC and the fact that cellular service is extremely deficient in that area.
Second.
All those in favor say yes.
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 Do we open up for additional comment before we vote on that? I get ahead of myself on that one.
I'll just simply state that, because I made the motion, it sounds to me where they were going to relocate it, they were going to try to relocate it on the high school property, would have put it closer to houses anyway,
Yes,
because
it
they were going
would.
to put it behind them.
Near
So
Sonia, yeah.
this one moves it away from,
It does,
Yeah.
yeah.
that's all I have.
So the public and the applicant.
Let's see, Commissioner St. Clair, I think, were y'all wanting to just go over it individually? That waiver?
Well, I was going to ask, do we want to, as we're going through the waivers, do we want to have comment from the applicant, or would you like the applicant present to address any questions we have as we
When they
go
have any comments.
through the?
I think we only need the applicant present if we have any comments. So if you're all right with that, Mr. Chairman?
Questions?
They're okay with it. yeah.
Streamline it a little bit there.
Yeah.
No, my only comments would be to support particularly both of those things. It's tucked away
Yeah.
and very unintrusive to the community. It will certainly help the cellular service as a victim of that on a daily basis. I can literally tell when it's rush hour and when school's in session, it's even compounded more. I can tell when each class changes is
Really?
kids are using their cell phone. I can predict that at noon, it's going to have a ZO service, basically. Everything's going to be so overloaded. And then I can move right through the afternoon through the 6 o'clock rush hour if you want to know exactly what's happening. I use internet since I'm working from home. I use the internet and the phone religiously every day for communication. And this is very much needed to offload a lot of that to load from the center of the town, from Kingston Pike north in particular. And I live basically under a cell tower because Concord Hills has the major tower on top of the hill in our subdivision. So it's affecting a lot of folks in the core center of our town and the subdivisions surrounding it. So I cannot think of anything better to support at this point in time because of the two reasons.
Commissioner Meyer,
Pass.
Mayor Williams,
Pass.
Commissioner Green.
Pass.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the first waiver, provision in section 3 that towers shall not be permitted in area identified as mixed-use town center. Second by Vice Chair St. Clair. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
No no's. Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, the next actually two waivers relate to setbacks from property lines. The first one is dealing with setbacks from non-residential zone property. We do differentiate, obviously, in this section of the zoning ordinance for towers and having different setbacks when they abut property zone residential versus property that's not zone residential. So this particular tower, for setbacks abutting non-residential property, it's based on the height of the tower, and it's 1/2 foot for each foot of the tower height plus the antenna. So you've got 165 foot tall tower. So half of that's 82.5 feet. The proposed tower is 65 feet from the property line to the property to the east that is zoned general commercial, where the Farragut Golf and Games is located. So this particular waiver would be 17.5 feet from the setback requirement for the tower from the non-residential property to the east. Staff recommends approval of this waiver. Again, some of the same reasons are going to apply to all these. The proposed tower is in a discrete location that's over 1,000 feet from the nearest home. The tower fall zone, one of the things that when they move the tower a little more inward to the west and center property, they have the fall zone, the 64-foot fall zone, is entirely on the west end property. Originally, part of that came into the Farragut Golf and Games and the school properties. So that's something that the relocation benefits those adjacent properties. The entire fall zone is on the west and center property. The cellular service, again, a third reason it's deficient. And really any other locations to move the tower to would put it either closer to improved developments or residential areas. And so for all those reasons, the staff is comfortable with this particular waiver and recommends approval of that waiver of 17.5 feet.
Move to approve waiver number 2 for the 3 reasons cited by staff.
Second.
Vice Mayor Pavlin, do you have any comments or questions? Pass. Vice Chairman St. Clair.
I have no further comments.
Commissioner Meyer.
Pass.
Mayor Williams.
Pass.
Commissioner Green.
No comment.
We have a motion to approve with the 3 sections of the waiver. All those in favor say yes.
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 No no's. So moved. Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, the third waiver is, as I mentioned earlier, related to setbacks. This is the setbacks from property that's zoned residential, and that's a 1-to-1 ratio. So for each foot of height the tower is, it has to be set back a foot from property zoned residential. So for a 165-foot tall tower, the setback's 165 feet. The proposed tower is 65 feet from the property that is zoned residential to the north, and that's the school property. That property is zoned general single-family residential. So this does result in a waiver, in this case, of 100 feet. The staff recommends approval of this waiver for the following reasons. Though there is an additional setback for towers and abutting residential property, the property that it is adjacent to that's zoned residential is not residential. It has 3 large public schools. The tower's in a discrete location that is actually over 1,000 feet from the nearest home. Secondly, the tower fall zone, as I mentioned earlier, is entirely on the property that they're leasing. If you tried to move the tower further away from the residential property, it's going to put it closer to existing buildings and more visible locations, and potentially, depending on which way you move it, closer to residential property. Thirdly, the cellular service is deficient, and there's a need for improved service in this particular area. And again, to move the tower pretty much in any direction, you're going to create some kind of issue, whether it's moving it more in a more developed or visible spot or closer to residential properties that are actually being used for residential. So for all those reasons, the staff does recommend approval of this particular waiver of 100 feet from the setback.
Move to approve the third waiver for the 3 reasons cited by staff.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Vice Mayor Pavlin.
I just have one. It's kind of not, we may want to consider looking at rezoning that property to S1, just because that's how it's being used. But certainly something to consider. I don't need to discuss it tonight. It's just something we might want to consider.
I think we'll probably address that whenever we get into the corridor study
Okay.
of that area for the town center.
Okay.
Vice Chair St. Clair,
Pass.
Commissioner Meyer,
Pass.
Mayor Williams,
I've already spoken.
Commissioner Green.
No comment.
We have a motion to approve. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
No no's. Motion passes 6-0.
And the fourth waiver is related to the tower equipment and compound and the setbacks that are specific to that. And there are 2 different setback criteria, the same as for the tower height itself. There's a 50-foot setback from the compound to property that's zoned non-residential, and there's a 60-foot setback from property that's zoned residential. So the tower compound is 17 feet from the non-residential property to the east. So if you take the 50-foot setback minus 17, the waiver in that case is a 33-foot setback waiver. And the compound is 21 feet from the property to the north that's zoned residential. So with the 60-foot setback specific to the compound in relation to residential property, minus the tower's distance, proposed distance of 21 feet, that creates a waiver from that property line of 39 feet. And those 2 can be acted on at the same time since they both are under the same section of the zoning ordinance as it relates to the equipment compound for macro towers. And the staff recommends approval of these waivers for the following reasons. The tower equipment compound is obviously tied to the tower placement, and the compound itself is over 1,000 feet to the nearest home. The tower equipment compound, similar to the tower itself, is in a discrete location. They have adjusted its placement so that it's outside of the drip line of the existing trees along the school property. And really to move the compound closer in any other direction, you're going to create potential issues. And then thirdly, the cellular service is deficient, as I mentioned earlier. And really moving the compound, as I mentioned, in any direction other than where it's at is going to either put it in a more visible or developed area or potentially make it closer to residential property. So for all those reasons, the staff recommends approval of this particular waiver.
Move to approve the fourth waiver for the 3 reasons cited by staff.
Second.
Do you have any additional comments to add, Vice Mayor Pavlin?
No.
Vice Chair St. Clair?
No more second.
Commissioner Meyer?
I do actually have a question about this particular, the item that we're working on, this waiver. And it has to do with the noise generated by, I assume they have some condensers. I'm not necessarily worried about the generators, because I suspect the generators will only be on during a power outage, but I would like the applicant to come up to the microphone and maybe see if they could elaborate a little bit more on the noise at these particular cabinets. Because I think the intent behind this particular setback on the equipment shelters has to do with the noise generated on, by some cell towers. So, at any rate, if the applicant wouldn't mind just coming up and elaborating a little bit on the noise generator. Again, I'm not worried about the generator unless the generator is running 24/7. Obviously, it probably has to be tested once a week or some sort of automatic test on it, but if you could elaborate on that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. My name is Michael Sandifer on behalf of Vogue Towers. My address is 4125 Coosa Drive in Cumming, Georgia. So there's no shelters if you're familiar with the prefab shelters that a lot of the equipment providers use, they have essentially regular air conditioning units on the end. They're not using those here. It'll be cabinetized. There are some heat exchangers on the doors, but they're very minimal as far as noise. And also, this one, early on in the design, we also changed from the chain link fence to the masonry wall around it, which will also help kind of.
So so without having a big HVAC mechanical unit, which I guess is just not required with the way the technology is, you don't need that kind of cooling capacity. Or you said you have some sort of little, like a mini split, or
Yeah, there is a heat exchanger on the door, but it's not like it's not like the old air conditioners. If you've been to one that has the full size building with air conditioners running and you hear it just like at your house, this is not that. The main cabinet, I mean, there's a battery cabinet. And there's a series of cabinets there. The main cabinet will have a little heat exchanger on the door, but it's minimal noise on that.
Okay. And then the generators, are those just, they have a diesel tank on those? Is that, and they're designed to run for X number of hours during a power outage?
Yes, depending on the location. Sometimes not here, there's not enough room. Sometimes they'll do a propane tank off to the side, but most of them are going to be a diesel belly tank, and it's not on except for emergencies, or they cycle it on a routine just to make sure it cranks. Yeah.
Okay. I'm comfortable. And I'm finished with my comments and questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Green, do you have any comments or questions? No comments. Thank you. We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. And no no's. So moved. Motion passes 6-0. And now we have another condition under the waivers.
That was all the waivers, the,
Subject
The site
to-
plan now, won't it?
just
The
the
site
site
plan.
plan itself and the
Just
tower.
the site plan?
Yeah, the subject twos were pretty standard. Since they are modifying the stormwater basin, we are going to require an erosion control and stormwater basin maintenance letter of credit. And that's a 2-year term minimum, just to make sure that what they've done is working, and, if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, that we can work with them and have the ability to make those adjustments. And usually, if there are issues, they'll usually show up within the first couple of years, So, secondly, obviously the providing all the structural and with the detention basin civil engineering documentation that we will need for the as constructed tower and the modified stormwater detention basin. Prior to the town issuing a certificate of completion for this project. Just verifying, I don't think I saw it on the plans, and that's why I added it to this comment, that there's no accessory structure that would exceed 15 feet in height. That's a requirement in the tower section. The trees are a big deal, as you all know, as the applicant knows. We want to try to protect those mature trees that are mainly on the north property line with the school, and so getting the tree fencing in and erosion control measures in place in the detention area will be required before we can issue a grading permit. And there may be some arborist review that the staff will ask the applicant to provide if we're concerned about certain trees and potential impacts to those. And then fifth is just kind of a catch-all. Obviously, we've granted a bunch of waivers in this case based on the context, which the staff did support. But just to make sure that all other aspects of the tower provisions in our zoning ordinance will be met with this particular project. One thing I would suggest, and I know the applicant's intent is to do this, but to try to avoid to the greatest extent possible the bottle brush look, if you can try to get it to have edges like what's in this image. I know that's something the staff would strongly encourage. It just looks like a more natural
Tree.
tree. We have a monopine on Concord Road, and it's not bad, but it is a kind of a pretty bottle brush looking tower. So again, we would ask the applicant to pay close attention to that, and with all those things, the staff recommends approval of the site plan.
I'm going to move to approve the site plan with the 5 subject twos.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say yes
Are we going to have some comments?
Yeah, let's have some comments.
on the site plan.
Mm-hmm.
So Vice Mayor Pavlin, I'll open up to you.
Do you guys
since
have
the
any
motion.
issues with the subject twos? You're fine with them? I would say I know that we do value our trees, except for those lovely Bradford pears along the driveway. So if you could selectively kill those, we'd be happy. I don't see that happening, but anyway, that's just in jest.
Vice Chair St. Clair.
I only have one question, the applicant. What's your target for going into operation with this tower?
Yes, exactly.
Time?
Yeah, what's
Yes.
your target date for going operational?
So the FCC places several regulatory items and approvals on the development of towers, and so we'll be doing that for the rest of this year. Right now, we're looking at having this up in first quarter
First quarter of next calendar year?
of 24, yes.
24. Do you have any more questions?
No, no more questions.
Commissioner Meyer?
I do, Michael, I actually braved the weather yesterday and got in that detention pond. It is a shallow detention pond. It's not a big catch basin detention pond like we have in the town. And so some of the concerns that I had last month, I don't have. But what I did notice is there is some maintenance that needs to be done in that pond, mostly around where your outlet structure is. Matter of fact, I kind of struggled finding the outlet structure. And theoretically, according to the survey, and he didn't put the particular size pipe, but theoretically there is some corrugated metal pipe that is your outlet structure that runs kind of due south, probably down to where Turkey Creek is, and which makes sense. So one of the things that it kind of appears to me that during a heavy rain event that pond is actually maybe not going to operate exactly the way that it's designed today. And I think it could operate if it was maintained. And it just needs to be cleaned out. And quite frankly, detention ponds in the town of Farragut and anywhere probably in this country getting kind of neglected because they're typically out of sight, out of mind. And so a lot of times it's not something that is maintained on a regular basis. And for them to function correctly, any of the overgrown vegetation that's in there that was not designed to be in there by the civil engineer needs to be cut back and cleaned out. So what happens is vegetation gets in there, weeds turn into trees drop their leaves, and then your outlet structure gets clogged up. So what I would ask of you, and I do have a vested interest as the property owner directly on your east side, that and I don't want the water in that detention pond to top over the berm, which is the kind of last closed contour, and spill down that bank, because then it's going to create problems. It actually has done that in the past. It would probably even take more rain than what we had today to do it. Probably a couple of inches in 24 hours for it to even think about it. So I would ask, as part of this process, since you are going to be in there grading and building a new retaining wall and some privacy walls for this, get in there and get that outlet structure exposed, make sure it's operating correctly. Unfortunately, corrugated metal pipe does have a life to it. This shopping center is an older shopping center, and corrugated metal pipe, even though it's galvanized, it still rusts. And so you guys need to check and make sure it is operating correctly and that you don't have any section of that pipe collapse. I don't think that it is. I suspect we would have much more problems if that pipe wasn't operating at all. But nevertheless, we think what you're doing is a good thing for the town, and there is absolutely a need for it. I think that this is the least worst of locations. I'll put it that way. This town's never been a huge advocate of cell towers, and there's been a bunch of battles fought for many years over cell towers. But I think this is about as good a location as you guys can come up with that is as least invasive as possible. And so I support this. I just do ask you to work with the property owner, and as you guys are doing work in this detention pond, go ahead and get that detention pond to function the way that it was designed.
Yes.
Because it's not doing that today. It just needs regular maintenance and cleaned out. And that's it.
Mayor Williams?
Well, Noah pretty well covered what I had to ask, and that was the pipe. Because we have a lot of corrugated pipe that fails because of the rust out. And the more people use fertilizer, the more that it's going to rust out. The quicker it'll happen. So I would check that pretty closely.
Yes, sir.
That's all I've got.
Did you know Commissioner Meyer went for a swim there yesterday?
There was very little water in it. There might be some water in it today, though. Because yesterday wasn't the heavy rain. Today it's rained all day, but nevertheless, again, we're not picking on you. This is every detention pond in the town of Farragut. I've actually got a few that I either own or manage, and I'm sure they probably need some maintenance in them as well. So again, you're going to be in there with equipment. This is as good a time as any to make sure that detention pond is working correctly.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Green, do you have any comments or
I
questions?
have no additional comments, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have moved to approve Macro Tower, corner of West End Center, with the waivers and subject tos. And we have a second, and now I'd like to vote. All those in favor say yes.
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 Yes. No no's. So moved. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Sandifer.
Yes.
I got it right.
Thank y'all very
I
much.
should remember it. Thank you very much for coming. All right, I hope you're not driving back to Chattanooga tonight.
I'm actually from Atlanta, so I'm staying the night. So, okay.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you again for coming. Mark, do we have any utilities this evening?
No, we don't have any this evening.
Okay, next item. Do we have any residents signed up to speak on the public forum?
I do have someone that signed up to speak under Citizen Forum, and that's Taylor Forrester.
Hello, Mr. Forrester. If you would, give us your full name and your address, please, and proceed.
Yes, sir. Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee. Thank y'all for entertaining us here tonight. I'm here to basically give an introduction and turn it over to my client, Novu Residential Group. They have legal interest in a piece of property located at 11645 Snyder Road, and they kind of want to have an informal discussion with the Planning Commission on a potential proposed development that they're considering, and kind of wanted to get the temperature of the Planning Commission and get some ideas and thoughts and recommendations. So
Okay.
I'll turn it over to Tony Cerasi.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Thank you all for having us here. Again, my name is Tony Cerasi with Novu Residential. As Taylor said, we have a legal interest in this property that I think you can see on your screen now, that Mark is highlighting. And we wanted to gauge kind of your all's input as we move forward with potential workshop session next month in August here with you all on a potential rezoning for multifamily development. We are a Class A multifamily developer, focused in the Sun Belt. Knoxville is a market we want to be a part of, especially in the town of Farragut. with this specific property, there is some interesting characteristics or unique challenges with it as far as the topography and some potential grading, unique features of the property with some potential closed depressions. We will focus and try to group as much of the residential units as like a cluster on the center of the property, while the western portion of the property, the southern portion of the property, maintains open space for recreation. I believe the town of Farragut has a hike and bike trail or foot and cycle trail there that runs along the north side of Snyder Road. We would, have resident access to that, and hopefully with the redevelopment of the Campbell Station I-40 interchange, having, further pedestrian and cycle access to the Turkey Creek trails. Are really looking at this piece of property with two intents. One is, a traditional multifamily style development similar to the density of the overlook at Farragut, which is immediate to the northwest of this property. I don't know, I think that's just a slide, so you won't be able to see it. But yes, where Mark is pointing at, you have the overlook at Farragut. And then across, obviously, Snyder Road to the east, you have the tapestry at Turkey Creek, which is not within the town of Farragut, but we would be developing a similar product to both of those. A second option that we're looking at is what we would consider more of a fully mixed residential development, where we may have one, traditional multifamily building located more in the center of the property. And then as we come towards the boundaries of the property, come with a lower level, attached, potentially detached housing, that would line Snyder Road, and as it turns from the, south, west, northeast to north direction there. What I will add is if you look at occupancy rates, there is a need for this type of housing within this specific location. The Tapestry Way, while it's not in the town of Farragut, is over 98% occupied. The overlook at Farragut is, again, over 98% occupied. And you look at other similar newer properties along the Hardin Valley area, you've got Icon, which is over 90%, starting a phase 2. Village at Westland Cove is, I think it's 97% or 96% occupied. So there's a need for this type of housing within the town of Farragut and West Knoxville.
What is this currently zoned?
It's currently zoned R1, and as when I was talking with Taylor about this a little bit, as y'all know, we kind of amended the future land use map a few years ago there, and that was because of its physical characteristics. It's open space cluster and open space are the two land uses there. So as they mentioned, there is an apartment to the immediate east, multifamily building there, and then there's the school that's on further up Snyder Road that's in the town, and then of course Buddy Gregg over here to the south location. I think they were just trying to present the general idea to see if there was any immediate feedback. They, of course, would have to present more detail, I think, at some point, obviously. But again, I think they were just wanting to get gut reaction from the Planning Commission at this point to see if they even needed to do anything further with this idea.
Question, is it just the corner parcel?
Yes.
Not the parcel, including also the parcel with the two
It's just
structures?
this one, I think.
Just
right?
that one?
Yes, it's just that one.
It's not this one. It's not that one.
It's just under 14 and a half acres.
14 and a half. Thank you.
It's still a junkyard?
I don't believe it is I mean, there's a single-family residence you can see, which the property owner's sister, I believe, lives in it. And I think that there are obviously some old vehicles, derelict boats, a few other things that may be on the north end of the property.
Used to be a junkyard because I bought parts from the guy there.
Well, that's going to be good to know.
Miller.
Antiques.
Well, I'm going to venture just a little in this, because this is going to be, you know that this is going to be controversial in this town. We've seen a lot of development happen in a very short period of time. I've always tried to indicate to our residents that we cannot control the pace of development. We have zoning ordinances and we have land use plans, but when property owners choose to exercise their property rights, that's on them, and that's why we have a land use plan, to help guide us when people are exercising their rights. If you're using about 14 acres, that translates to about 168 units. And then, of course, that corridor is our entertainment corridor.
That's right.
So I have, I have concerns, questions. What are the potential uses for that? It's obviously still zoned for a residential. We have a residential point of view on that. This is something that I would want to wait and hear from my constituents on that. Obviously, I'm in the North Ward, and this is part of my my ward. I think another issue that has been very misunderstood is that it depends upon what this is zoned. Obviously, this is zoned R1, so you're going to R6. That apartments don't generate near the traffic that commercial does. If this is going to be a entertainment district, is the opportunity for it to be commercial, or the land use plan calls for open space residential? These are the kinds of questions that we're going to have to answer as a community. What's the vision for the rest of this corridor? Because we're still struggling we've got a great little nugget there with Top Golf, but we're not entirely sure how we're going to move along in that corridor, given that half of it's Knox County, and they've got like a warehousing district over where they are right now. So I'm just throwing out to you all of the things that,
Oh, absolutely.
questions that are going to be asked.
Thank you.
There's a lot of physical constraints on the north side of Snyder in this general area. This property has some sinkholes. There's a huge sinkhole to the west and a wetland, definitely a jurisdictional wetland.
Yeah, the western property boundary.
Down here, this is
Yeah, there's
very, so that's not going to be developed as anything intense. There's just no way to do it.
Okay.
There's some sinkholes mostly down in this area on this property.
Yeah, most of the sinkholes, there's one, if you see that kind of, it's not the entrance to the single-family residence, but the other one to the south there, Mark, if you move your cursor to the south.
South of there.
Your other south.
Which way?
South,
George Street.
down and left, straight down.
Keep on.
Anyways, so right there, between those two drives, there's a closed depression. And then kind of as the trees fall towards the property line, it gets really steep. And so there's a lot of area there that would be undeveloped that we would include to really beautify what's there.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 closed depressions of varying size on there, if you look at just the available topographic information. But, yeah, and that was really when we updated the future land use map. That's why we changed that. That was actually, I think, office. We changed it to open space cluster because of the physical characteristic of the property. And it also gives an applicant the ability to mix potentially single-family attached and detached to transition. You may have the attached here closer to the tapestry and then transition to detached as you work your way to the west. So that would be the OSMR zoning district that would fit with the current land use designation of open space cluster. And that, in that particular location, I would see a mix of detached and attached as being appropriate because of what your surrounding context is, with the multifamily just across the street and Buddy Gregg. You know, to have a entirely single-family detached or a R1 type development, that it may not really be the right context now
Yeah.
for that particular zone.
I think a little higher density is actually what's appropriate right
I
there.
think so. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't think it'll match the density of the Tapestry, though.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, I
that's pretty
think,
dense.
yeah, you need
The
to.
site won't even.
No, I don't think the site would allow that under the property acreage. But, you know, like I said, our second option would be, you know, some sort of mixed residential with detached, although we would still like to have potentially one multifamily building, but we would still be well under what the Tapestry's density units per acre are.
Well, I think that would be important because community is sensitive to also the impacts on the schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That might be interesting to consider, something that is a mix of attached and detached, and multifamily.
It may be something that would require a text amendment, you know, we've talked about the missing middle, and really the only missing middle product that we provide for right now are townhomes.
Yeah.
We don't really have the quadplex or the smaller footprint multifamily building.
Yeah.
Because again, a lot of the concerns about multifamily that I've heard over the past few years is the scale of the
Yeah.
building.
Yeah.
And the buildings are kind of, you know, commercial in scale, and you got the big parking lot. And if you can kind of create smaller modules of buildings that, you know, are kind of more single-family residential in scale to some extent, then I think it probably would be a little more palatable with the community, is my sense of what I've heard over the past several years, is just focus on that scale is very important. And we may not have anything right now in our zoning that would allow it, and we maybe as a community might want to revisit that, because there may be other areas or infill locations where the missing middle, and maybe this mixed-use town center visioning process will help us, give us some ideas and things to think about that we may not only consider here in the town center, but maybe in areas like this or in info locations in other parts of the town.
I would love to entice some of our, I know that we live off commercial, but we also, I don't know how much more commercial we can support in the town. I would love to see some of these commercially zoned properties, giving them an opportunity to move to residential. They would have a lesser impact on traffic, and maybe this would be something that would be an opportunity. That's also a discussion that this community has to have. How much more commercial can we really support?
I think the applicant's probably going to need some sort of consensus for guidance to figure out where they go from here. So I'm kind of hearing two products that you're interested in. I think your plan A, if it's fair to call it plan A, would be more traditional multifamily.
That's right.
It's probably easier to make the numbers work, and quite frankly, I think there's a demand for multifamily, and I think it makes sense in that location. I'm not sure everybody else has as much appetite for multifamily as I do, but nevertheless, and then your plan B would be some sort of hybrid that might have maybe a mixture of quadplexes and duplexes, triplexes, and maybe a multifamily component in a couple different buildings, which I'm not really sure we have any kind of zoning district that's really geared up for that. But we could, it wouldn't be the first time that we have either created a new zoning district or we have modified it. You know, we have some zoning districts that are kind of not used anymore. You know, so maybe that's coming R5. I'm trying to figure, do we have anything that's even R5?
We have one thing.
We have
that's
one R5, which is
Well, no, you have the.
Shiloh? No.
No, the the townhome, the duplexes on Village Green.
Oh,
are
yeah.
R5. And
R5?
then there's R5 over there
On
right by
Concord
Concord
Road.
Road.
Yeah.
Yes.
Concord
So
Road.
anyway, there might be something that's there, but I think kind of the reason why you guys are here is you kind of get the pulse and some feedback from this planning commission of what we would support and what we don't support. So I've kind of told you, I'm open-minded to either option A or option B, and I'll let the others kind of speak for themselves, and then you guys can take that information and digest it for what it's worth.
Thank you, Meyer.
I think Plan B would probably be more palatable to the community.
Yeah, I think that's first choice to look at, and if it, so you still got to make numbers work, so you have to make a decision based on what's
That's right.
viable for you all, but I think option B is more preferable to me.
Okay, I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you. We look forward to working with you.
What was your company name again?
It's Novu Residential, Novu.
Oh, no, BU, okay.
B is V?
V is in Victor.
V is in Victor.
Thank you.
Okay, and your name was?
Tony Soracey, Sorace.
Easy enough.
Tony, when you guys get a little further along in this, and assuming you're still in due diligence, you're gonna want to do some geotechnical on this. I'm looking at a historical aerial, and you guys, it's available to you on KGIS. But there was a fair amount of mass grading done back in '96, and you want to scratch your head and go, okay, why were they mass grading that? Were they using it as a borrow pit, or what exactly were they doing, or did they bury something? Obviously, I don't know if you may not be to that point yet, because that's when you start really spending some money when you hire the geotechnical to go out there and do some borings. But you probably are going to want to. I would want to do
sure.
it, and I think you heard what the mayor said, that he used to buy car parts over there.
That was a junkyard right there. So.
Is there some environmental thing, and it's probably all good. We'd love, believe me, we would love to see the property redeveloped and create a better tax base. I think having residents in there, they support our entertainment district, they support restaurants, and matter of fact, apartment residents, they go out to eat a lot more than single family
That's right.
homeowners go out to eat. So they're good for us recruiting restaurants, and so I encourage you to kind of move forward, and probably your next step is get with staff and start kind of developing what your plan looks like, and then hopefully we can find something that works for you and makes sense for you guys as well as the community.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers.
Tony, could I get your address for the record, please?
Yes,
I didn't catch it.
my address is 2207 2nd Avenue North, Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. Thank you, Tony.
All right, thank you all.
You're aware of staff developer meetings and how that works?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, just, because that's, you'd need to get on that if you've.
Absolutely.
Vice Chair St. Clair, did you have another question or comment? You're good there?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate you coming out tonight. That said, the time is approximately 9:02 p.m., and without the objection of the commission, the July 20th, 2023 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting is now adjourned.
Great job, Mr. Chairman. Way to go.
Thank you.
You've been initiated.
It's only one way.